Job, one of the greatest of the world's writings, is an arraignment of God's rule by a man undeservedly tormented and suffering.
It's an acknowledgement of injustice, and yet suggests that not the answer, but the conclusion of that engagement is humility. I don't know what that means.
I forget who used came up with the term the rage against God, but a lot of socialism is like that.
If this world was made by a God, he is unjust and cruel. Therefore, there is no God. I think you're left drowning.
The answer that the universe simply exists and does not care about you is very, very close to there is a God and he's all-powerful and he's evil. It's close. Because there is no one to turn to in the case of extreme suffering. To go out into the solar system looking for the absent father. I mean, come on. Job, one of the greatest of the world's writings, is an arraignment of God's rule. I don't know what the word arraignment means precisely.
Arraignment? I'm not sure either.
A passionate discussion of the justice, or rather the lack of it, in the world by a man undeservedly tormented and suffering. He and his friends dispute at no little length the fairness of the Almighty, Shaddai, a favorite name in the book. But the problem remains insoluble. None may question the righteousness of the Creator. Nonetheless, in a difficult passage, Job clings to the hope of ultimate vindication, and a vision of God leaves him humbled. I don't know.
It's a pretty good summary.
I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I was always struck by Job. I mean, it's one of my favorite books. Sorry.
Where did you post?
Right there.
Okay.
It's one of my favorite books in the sense that well, exactly what he just described. It's an acknowledgement of injustice, and yet suggests that not the answer, but the conclusion of that engagement is humility. I don't know what that means. I think that's why we keep talking about it.
Yeah. No, I agree. It's Job sort of stands out from the rest of the Bible as being doubtful.
It's partly why I highlighted it in an article that I wrote as being essentially as old as Genesis, from what we know.
Oh yeah, I remember.
The earliest copy we have of both Genesis and Job is from the same time.
That's interesting.
So they're at least both older than the rest of the books.
Yes.
Or the copies would imply.
Yeah. Probably the two most pressing questions. Where do we come from? And
what do we do about suffering?
Yeah, those are two things.
There's something I highlighted in a video I made about that same article, which is, it's fascinating to me that the two questions we chose to highlight were origin and suffering, specifically. So how was the world we made, and why are we like this? Why did we start suffering? And the second question is, what do we do about it? What do we do about the fact that we're suffering? And it can be as bad as Job describes, which is, maybe up until the books of Jesus, it is the worst case of suffering in the Bible.
Yeah, it's the strongest. It's the steel.
Because the part of the passion that's most empathic is the fact that the almost implicit claim that no one has suffered like this ever. And no one may again, with the weight of all the world's sins on their shoulders. Yeah. A perfect and innocent man. Yeah. But that injustice, that level of injustice, has never and will never happen again.
Yeah. So you could think.
But Job is almost a precursor to that, in that it highlights unjust suffering that way. I hadn't thought of that. I would be interested to talk to someone who's actually knowledgeable about this.
What do you do about the fact that a lot of suffering is quote unquote undeserved? So you have a morality, a moral system about how humans should act, and yet some people who do all the right things then have a very bad time. What do you do about that fact? You could argue redistribution, but sometimes it's something like cancer. And it doesn't matter if you take from the rich to give to the poor, because that won't help. You can even argue in the future we'll find a cure, so we need to tax people, but it's not in the here and now. The person who has that problem that you haven't yet found a solution for, it doesn't make any difference. So the problem is almost I forget who first came up with the term the rage against God, but a lot of socialism is like that. It's just hey, the universe itself is set up in a way which is unjust. And I'm very unhappy about it, with good reason. Sorry, where did you play?
I just kept it to MP3.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a sort of, seen in that lens, the rejection of God, the rejection of a universe that is maybe rightfully considered unjust, or evidently, is not actually a comfort. Because you go, if this world was made by a God, he is unjust and cruel. Therefore, there is no God. I think you're left drowning.
Well, I mean, you can't. It's very hard to take action after that, because you're angry against all of existence. It's funny. There are sort of three options for the problem of evil. I can't remember them all, but one is God is good and all-knowing, and evil is therefore necessary. But there's also what were they called? Zoroastrian approach, where there are two gods. One is evil, one is good. They are locked in eternal battle, and the reason evil exists is because the evil god is equally as strong.
Are they called Manichaean?
Yeah, that's Manichaean, I believe.
Manichaean
is the term for that.
In Christianity.
Yeah. There is a third option, but no one's ever really enthusiastic about it, which is the flipped version, which is God is evil and all-powerful. No one's happy about that one. It's not very popular.
Well, that's why the people that come to that conclusion go, and therefore I don't believe in him.
I don't think that's an escape. I think when you say I don't believe in God, and that solves the problem, it doesn't. Evil still exists.
Oh, yeah.
Suffering still exists. And so what you're saying is, I actually believe in an uncaring universe.
Yeah, because I suppose the answer to someone who thinks that there's an evil God is, okay, I don't believe in him. I mean, the cruel answer would be, do you think he cares?
Yeah.
But, I mean, the point, you still reach the same point where the proper way to act is the fear of God.
Sure. My point is that the modern man, or I should say modern, a lot of Greeks came to the same conclusion. There were plenty of atheists. The answer that the universe simply exists and does not care about you is very, very close to there is a God and he's all-powerful and he's evil. It's close. Because there is no one to turn to in the case of extreme suffering. Psychologically, it's not that different. And so a lot of our media, we have, especially recently, in old sci-fi, you'd go out into a universe full of life. Now you go out into a universe and it's empty.
Or, plus, it is empty but once had life.
Oh yeah,
that's a manifestation that I find very.
It's pretty symbolic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where did you play, sir?
Connected.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I was telling you about the film Ad Astra, which I'd like you to see at some point. It's exactly that. It's man journeying out into the universe and finding it empty. And on a symbolic level, I think that Ad Astra comes from the deep parts of our culture. I think it's a good representation of it. I don't think an earlier culture, I don't think the 1950s culture would have ever made a film like that.
No, they would have found that. Yeah, I want to say revolting.
Sure, but the point is, it's a beautifully shot film. The spaceships are great, the space stuff is great, and yet at the core, it is a correct representation of our relationship to the universe as we perceive it. So it's not about space. And I would say that the man's relationship with his father is actually a stand-in, and I think pretty explicitly at one point, for our relationship with God.
Oh,
So
okay.
to go out into the solar system looking for the absent father. I mean, come on.
Yeah, put it that way. Yeah, fair enough. There's something very funny about watching a professional game of Go. So I was watching a documentary of AlphaGo.
Oh, yeah.
And you have, because no one who's watching it, most people that watch it have no idea about Go, they have commentators that had live commentators in the moment. And so you have the computer player move, like move 37, I think it was, in the game, in the first game they played. And all the commentators are going, oh my God, that's an exciting move. And you're like, and it's like something like, there's a piece here and he does this, and it's in the middle of the board. And they go, oh, a human wouldn't do that. That's exciting. And everyone's watching it going, oh, the top comment on the documentary is, because it was on YouTube for free, is Go is like life. I don't know how to play Go.
Okay, that's pretty good. I like that.
God, war sucks, man. These are just details that just suck. What did you play, sir?
Yeah, peace is unpleasant in its own way. Peace is unpleasant because everyone turns into a really, really irritatingly weak person, including me. So I know that in various aspects I'm not a patch on people from the past who came from an era with more conflict.
It is fascinating to me that one of the most important kinds of people in a Greek naval war were the rowers.
Yeah.
Not the captains or the sailors or the navigators. It was the people that could be counted on to row. So there's a point there about Corinth and I'll say the name. Corcyra. Giving good terms to rowers from other states to come and join them. So the specific point is, in Corinth, tempers were running higher over the war with Corcyra. All through the year following the sea battle and in the year after that, the Corinthians were building ships and doing everything possible to increase the efficiency of their navy. Rowers were collected from the Peloponnese itself, and good terms were offered to bring them also from the rest of Hellas. Wow.
Fair enough.
Maybe more ships and more rowers. And it's striking because from just media and cultural memory, rowers are usually, in my mind, slaves.
Ah, that's the Roman system.
So I have the wrong model in mind for this sort of battle.
Maybe maybe that's one of the things that kept all the Greek cities sharp was they actually did have to compete for citizens. People might move. I got another excerpt for you.
Okay.
The great prophets were confronted by what was virtually a nature religion. One, however, not devoid of ethical ideas, and their achievement was to ethicize it and to emphasize the fundamental principles of the relationship between God, the universe, and man. The prophets of the Old Testament in general find their successors at the birth and rise of Christianity. So there's something there which, just because we've mostly decided not to believe in God, doesn't change, which is you still have this relationship with the universe, other people, and all the rest of it, and that problem doesn't go away just because you don't believe in anthropological God. But we pretend it does. Christopher Hitchens, for example, I only recall maybe, a couple instances where he sort of began to grapple with the fact that if you get rid of God and religion, you still have that problem. And his brother did grapple with that more thoroughly in a way that Christopher Hitchens never really wanted to. Because he knew that was all of his arguments, all of his rhetoric wouldn't help with that.
Do you think that's the correct frame, that he didn't want to?
I think it's worth noting he didn't want to.
Okay.
I think he found it far more enjoyable to point out flaws and problems than to fix them. Fixing things is hard. It's much harder.
And there might not be as much fame in it.
No, but the central problem in human society of how to stop people from killing each other and how to get them to make stuff together, that doesn't go away, God or no God. The people that I'm aware of who have dealt with this the most, I would say, are the Chinese.
Okay.
Who have not believed in an anthropomorphic God for a very, very long time. And yet have had civilizations after that.
That's true.
And they deal with it in a number of ways. It's worth noting that when they do really get down to fighting each other, it's completely vicious. There are no boundaries. So when they have bureaucratic conflicts, whole clans just disappear. It's bam.
Yeah. And a anthropomorphic God can allow for things like mercy in a way a bureaucratic
I think a little
God,
more.
way of life God can't.
If you believe that there's only the universe, why if you can afford to not show mercy, why not do that?
Fair enough. That was my move.
Sometimes I do wonder if the Chinese will inherit the earth. They've lived with certain problems longer than we have.
Who are the rowers today?
Who do you need to have buy-in? Probably technical people, content people.
Yeah, technical and content people.
Yeah, it's where it counts to have them on your side.
Everyone trying to do something political has a videographer.
Yeah.
Everyone trying to editor.
Everyone trying to build a company has a software guy.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. What do you see?
All right. Islam, submission, is the third. This is a bit long, but
No, that'd be good.
Is the third Semitic monotheism. The other two being Judaism and Christianity. Like these, it is the religion of a book with a capital B, and like the latter and Buddhism, it owes itself to a single founder. All right, I'll skip most of this. Oh, interesting. Allah is a majestic and transcendent sovereign, all-powerful, autocratic, and absolute. But he is also compassionate and merciful, and needs no mediator. Islam acknowledges Judaism and Christianity. Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, who is regarded as the only sinless man, were exalted intercessors. But Muhammad supersedes them all and is the final prophet. Dum dum dum. This is the part that made me laugh. Owing to the growth of divergent copies of the Quran, the text was fixed in AD 651 by preparing a revised version and burning all the other existing manuscripts.
Well, they tackled the problem early.
Yes, they did, didn't they?
Famously, there are still divergent versions of the Bible.
Yes.
The Catholics do not use the same book as the Protestants.
No, they don't, do they?
It is almost the same, but not totally.
No.
Because he's talking about symbolism in dreams. very interesting.
Okay.
There's a note here about how different things can stand for other things in dreams.
Okay.
So he talks about how... let's see. So a Portuguese man, I'm pretty sure, yeah, Portuguese man, he notes that the Portuguese, let's see if I can find the note. Okay, so there was a dream where he could interpret, or he guesses, that the subject of wood was symbolizing female maternalism.
Okay.
And he goes, okay, there's still something to be said on the subject of wood. It is not easy to see why wood should have come to represent a woman or a mother. But here is a comparison of different languages that may be useful to us. Mm-hmm. The German word Holz is said to be wood, is said to be derived from the same root as the Greek, which means stuff, raw material. This would be an instance of the process by which no means rare, in that a general name for a material has come finally to be applied to a particular material only. There is an Atlantic Ocean, an island named Madeira, which is the name that was given to it by the Portuguese, because it was covered in dense forests, for the Portuguese word for wood is madeira. But you cannot fail to notice that the word madeira is merely a modified form of the Latin materia, which again signifies matter in general. Madera is the same thing in Spanish. Now, materia is derived from mater, mother, and the material out of which anything is made of to be conceived of as giving birth to it. So in the symbolic use of wood to represent woman or mother, we have the survival of this old idea.
That's interesting.
So he gives others. Let's see. An oven standing for a woman or a mother's womb. Talks about the Greek stories of Periander of Corinth and his wife Melissa. I can also think of Hansel and Gretel, of the old witch, eventually trying to stick them in the oven. So the repressive mother eventually just wants to return them to the womb. Also, if you have chance to wonder at the frequency with which landscapes are used in dreams to symbolize the female sexual organs, you may learn from mythologists how a large part of what has been played in the ideas and cults of ancient times by Mother Earth, and how the whole conception of agriculture was determined by this symbolism.
Yeah, that makes sense. By the way,
I'm fascinated by how people can unconsciously, in a dream, conjure up through the use of a language word the old meaning. That's amazing.
That's why Go is
it's fun.
A more fluid game than chess.
And it's never it's never as punchy as chess, which is good. It's never like, got your queen, you resign, which is what happens all the time in chess. Or you play it out, you say, well, I'm going to play it out, see if you blunder. With this, it's actually, you don't, you got two fortresses. He's winning.
Yeah.
He would win if we stopped now.
Yes.
But the game can continue.
It does. Which I would argue is a very, I think the two games represent extremes of the Western Eastern viewpoint.
Okay.
Well, because the Western one is so blunt. It's in your face. There was a victory. There was this one thing that made the victory.
And there's you at the end of it, one guy feels like the loser, one guy feels the winner. There, I enjoyed that. That was meditative.
Yeah.
Spent an hour in the sun,
yeah.
or with the breeze.